lettings business. As Femi said, some of you buy properties, some of you rent properties, others of you have bought properties and might want to rent them out yourselves. Have we got many people in tonight that rent properties out as a landlord to somebody else? Yes, yes. So a few of us in here rent properties currently. For those of you who don't and you think, well, actually, I wouldn't mind doing that, let's do that. But before we start, I've told you a little bit about me. I'm going to tell you a little bit more in a short while, but I want to know about you. So in the next 30 seconds, those of you who didn't get the opportunity last week to share, let's find out a little bit about you, who you are, as you can see there, who you are, what you do, and really what you're looking to get out of this evening. Tell us a little bit about you. We'll go this side to begin with. Tell us about yourself. I think that's off. Who didn't speak last week? No. No. Good evening.
Yeah, my name is Alex.
I currently work as a support worker. I used to be a project manager back in Nigeria in tech industry. I have some experience working as a project manager with USAID before relocating to the UK. I've also had experience working as a real estate agent.
Okay.
I remember 2018, I emerged as the best business officer in one of the fast growing real estate in Nigeria. They call them Andron Home. I think.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
So
Good to hear.
you say USAID. I'm glad you've left Nigeria now.
My name is John. I work as an accountant with the government of Wales, and I've been an accountant all my life.
Great. Thank you so much. We need accountants in our world.
Who else wants to introduce himself?
You spoke?
herself?
One here.
But if you want to do it again.
Always another chance. Exposure review.
Well, like I said before, my name is Samuel Adeniro. I'm a nurse by profession.
Yes.
I presently work as a nurse in a care home.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I'm here to learn how to go into business.
Thank you so much. Well, it's good. Tonight you're going to learn how to get into business. You're going to learn a little bit about how different aspects of business work.
Thanks everyone. I don't like publicity. My name is Shola Ohiria. I used to work in police medical services in Nigeria, and I happened by the grace of God to be director of laboratory services for the police all over the country. Before I came to the UK, I happened to like business, which I was doing apart from working as a civil servant.
Yes.
And I happened to have some houses as well in Nigeria, which I rented before I came to the UK. In the UK, I work in the NHS, and I happen to be lucky to be, what do you call them, people who rent houses, landlords. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Do you have anything to say? Amen. Who else needs to be introduced? Who else wants to be introduced?
Yourself.
I'm Femi David. I love business.
Good.
After pastoring, the next hobby I love is business, both locally and internationally. And that's why I'm encouraging everyone to be into business. Christianity is better said when you also control resources. So when you say God answers, they know that God truly answers. And so I'm trusting everyone who comes here today, before you leave, you will grab something that will encourage you into business world. Amen.
Amen. I love what Femi said when...
Somebody speak.
I love what Femi opened by saying was that he said, when we pray, sometimes we pray and expect God to send manna from heaven. But actually, he's given you 2 legs, 2 hands and a mouth. And we are his hands and feet here on earth. Jesus is sat at the right hand of the Father. But actually, he's given us hands and feet to do what we do here on earth. And he's given you a brain to think. So tonight we're going to use those things to see how we can extend his kingdom.
Okay, so I decided to talk.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Wairi, and let me start with, I was a lawyer in Nigeria. I am a lawyer actually, but
Yes.
in Nigeria. And when I was in Nigeria, I had different scenarios or different cases where I drafted tenancy agreements, did physical inspections in houses,
Yes.
went to the land registry for further investigations on land, C of O, and so many other surveying documentation that has to do with tenancy and those clauses in Nigeria. So
Yes.
I have understanding of real estate. So when I heard about letting, I'm not into business, but when I heard about this letting agents, and
Yes.
I felt, okay, yes, I have some background knowledge about it. So let me come and see if I can reroute myself if time comes and understand how it's done here.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's me done because she's just told you everything we need to know. So we're done. But actually, tonight, we're going to have a look at the objectives of tonight's workshop. And tonight's workshop is really designed at inspiring you as entrepreneurs to establish your own letting agency. Whether you're new to it, never done it before, or whether you've got experience like some of you have, you can learn all sorts of things tonight. And in this session, the key points that we're going to take away are some of the things you've just mentioned. As a lawyer, legal requirements, business planning, marketing strategies about how to set up an estate agency, client acquisitions, how to find new business, because you can't make money without any clients, but also some best practices tonight. And at the end of the session, what we'll take away is you having a clear understanding of the necessary steps to launch and run a successful business as a letting agency. So some of the things we'll have a look at is understanding the lettings industry. It's not complicated. Some people are scared to be a landlord. Some people are fearful to open estate agencies. I'm going to make it simple. And the reason I'm going to make it simple is because I'm simple. I like to keep things simple. Why overcomplicate things? In business, it doesn't have to be complicated, but we're going to learn the legal and the statutory requirements of being an estate agent or letting agent, but also how to set up those operations, those business operations, all the way through to client relationship management systems, and things that will make your life easy to be in property. For some of you, you're already doing it, but you just need to tweak what you're doing to make your life easier. Well, I've got a workbook which you can all have on how to start a business. Most of you received it last week. For those of you who haven't, just send me a message, which I'll give you the details shortly, and you'll be able to access that. So we're going to just talk briefly about where I came from, and the reason I want to share this with you is to inspire you. For those who weren't here last week, I've not always been in business. I've not always been in a estate agency. I've worked for many years for some of Newport's largest agents, Darlow's, Peter Allen, Redkey, and some other big names in the city. And then I decided to start my own estate agency because I'd reached the pinnacle of my career. I became lettings negotiator, to manager, to branch manager, area director for other companies, and then realized I wanted to do it for me. But there was a why. Why did I want to do it for me? It was because I've got a family. And for each and every one of you, you'll have a different why. Why you want to be in business. And when I'm talking tonight about estate agency and letting agencies, and last week we spoke about security, for some of you it might be the care sector. But what I'm talking about tonight is transferable. transferable into all areas of business. But I grew up in a council estate in Cardiff, not far from here, and I came from a broken family. My mother was an alcoholic, my father was in and out of prison, so I never came from a wealthy family with money. But I was in and out of the care system. But what that did is it fueled my ambition, and it shaped my perspective and fueled me to have a drive and an ambition to want to be better than my parents were. Not saying my parents were bad people, I love them dearly. I saw my mother last night and spoke to my dad this morning, and love them very much. They did their best for me, and we must never underestimate what people have done for us. But I ran many successful businesses over the last 10 years, but my background and where I came from fueled me to where I want to go. And for some of you, you've come to this country and you've had a rough ride. You've had a tough life, but it's given you a grit in your stomach and an ambition and a drive and a determination to be better for the future. And I want to encourage you to just keep going. Some of you thinking life is tough here. And yes, life can be tough. But one thing that we can talk openly tonight about is him. He's on our side. He'll take care of us. And you can be successful. I proved that because of where I came from to where I am. I broke the mold. And every one of you also can be successful. They're just some of the companies I've owned and run. The Respite Cafe was here in Pill, right the way through to the hot tub hire. In fact, I didn't tell you about this last week. Let me encourage you in something. Do you know an entrepreneur is someone who sees an opportunity and does it? Karen, my wife, she tried to hire a hot tub. Did I tell you this story last week? So she tried to hire a hot tub for my birthday and they were fully booked. So phoned another company. They were fully booked. Phoned another company. They were fully booked. So I thought there's an opportunity here. So I decided I'm going to buy hot tubs and I'm going to rent them out. And that's what I did. Bought one, double booked. Bought another, double booked. At the end, we had 6 of them across our garden for the children to have fun on their birthday. But actually, down this bottom corner, you see everything security. We spoke about that last week. Everything holidays and everything lettings. Tonight, we're going to focus on the lettings industry and how to set up a lettings industry. I'm going to just flick through some of these slides here because we spoke about that last week. We don't need to keep going over what we spoke of because some of you are here from last week. But an entrepreneur or entrepreneurship is about turning an idea into a business. That's the definition of entrepreneurship. Turning an idea into a business. And an entrepreneur, you and me, and I don't say an entrepreneur, me, I say us. An entrepreneur is someone who sees an opportunity and does it. What is it you've got a dream of doing? What is it you like doing? What is it you'd like to do? Well, what's holding you back? Just provoking some thoughts for a moment. What's holding you back from doing what you dream of doing? If that's to have an accountancy practice instead of working for somebody, what's holding you back? If it's to open a care agency, supplying staff to care homes across South Wales, what's holding you back? If it's to be a transport delivery company, delivering all around this nation like DPD, what's holding you back? I seen a photograph recently of Amazon in 1964 and how they started with one single desk in a cupboard of a room with papers stacked high all around it. You're never too old to start. I forget the age of KFC, the owner. You've probably seen him on social media. Was he 64? If I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on that. But the owner of KFC started KFC at the age of 64. If I'm not mistaken, he may even have been older. Someone's going to check it now. So, started his business at 64. You're not finished yet. You're not finished. You're never too young and never too old, because you can do and be successful. But why do you want to do it? Is it for financial freedom? Is it for independence? Do you want to be successful in business for you? And I'd encourage you tonight to find your why. 62? 62 years of age. A gentleman at retirement age started his business. How many of you been to KFC? Give me a wave. Tell the truth now, you're in church. KFC. I'll tell you the truth now. I went there last week before I walked in this place. I didn't go there tonight, I promise. But at 62, he started his business. There's nothing holding you back. Do you know the only person that's holding you back? You. Stop making excuses. It's time to start saying yes to some of the things that you can do. But why do you want to do it? Because I met a client today and I was talking about the why. Why do I do what I do? Don't get me wrong, I love doing what I do and helping business owners. But do you know the real why of why I travel the country? Why I go up and down helping people to be successful in business? And it's not to help people in business. It's to fund and finance the ministry. We run a ministry, and just like Paul the apostle made tents to go and fund and finance him traveling, I run the business to fund and finance the ministry. If it was good enough for Paul, it was good enough for me. So I travel to churches up and down this country, edifying and encouraging the body. I was at a chapel yesterday here in Wales, in Rhuderin, just outside Newport, not far from here. Wonderful, beautiful little congregation of people, 25 or 30 people there. But going to that chapel, running the business, enables me to fund and finance the ministry. That's my why. That's why I do what I do. Because God's called me as an Ephesians 4 gift to equip the body. It says, these are the gifts Christ gave to the church. And their responsibility is to equip the saints for works of service. So you can't do that with no money. God's given me a pair of legs and a brain, 2 hands and a mouth. And I use it to make money to fund and finance the kingdom. In the same way the Apostle Paul made tents, what has he given you to do? What has he given you? The ability to do. Find your why. And for some of you, it might be to put food on the table for your family. If that's your why, good. If that's your why, keep going. If that's your why because you want to take care of your family, great. In the same way, when I set up Everything Lettings, my why was different to what it is for Ignite Business Consultancy. My why then was to fund and finance the kingdom, to be able to make money and with the profits invest it in the kingdom, to give it as to wherever God wanted me to give funds and finance. But for you, it might be personal fulfillment. What is it that's motivating you to start a business? We're going to have a look at setting up an estate agency and letting agency, so that if that is your drive and that is your ambition, that's what you want to do. We're going to switch now to another slide on starting a letting agency in Wales. Tonight it's going to be a bit more practical. It's going to be a little more looking at the how to set up an estate agency or a letting agency. And we're going to go through a step-by-step guide to the legal requirements and the responsibilities and best practices of how to set up a letting agency. So, introduction. What we're going to do tonight is, if you're thinking of setting up a letting agency in Wales, you must follow some rules, some regulations, and you need to be licensed. Do any of you know that? Some of you know that you need a license in Wales. For those of you who don't, we're going to talk about practical things tonight. Very different to last week where I just gave you information, but later on we're going to talk. We're just going to talk together and see what actually is it that you want to know. But you must follow some legal processes, as you mentioned yourself a little moment ago. In order to manage a portfolio of properties, you must do it in a professional manner. because there are some things that govern the lettings industry here in Wales. Very different in Wales to what it is in England. Have any of you got properties in England? Give me a wave. No? That's okay. You got some in Nigeria and other places. But in Wales, legal requirements are very different. We must register as a landlord. You must register with Rent Smart Wales. All of these slides are available for you. I'll give them to Femi so that they are available for you. And or reach out if you're making notes. By all means, take screenshots if you want to. But you must register with Rent Smart Wales. It is a legal requirement, and if you don't, they can fine you or imprison you. I have known of people that that's happened to, and it is really important to comply. Basically, as believers, we need to do things right. That's the law. That's what we've got to do, so we need to obey it. But I have known of landlords who've chosen not to, and they've chosen to do it their way instead of what the law says. But God will bless you for doing things right. He really will. And you've got to get licensed. If you manage properties in Wales, you must have a license. If you choose to register as a landlord in Wales, but you don't want to manage the property yourself, hand it over to an agent, of which we were one of. There are many other agents around, and for some of you, I'm hoping tonight that you will choose to set up your own letting agency. The great thing about the lettings industry, and I'm grateful for some of you under the sound of my voice tonight that trusted me with your properties, because the money that we made from it was able to fund and finance the kingdom. But actually, one thing with money coming into the business was you have it on a regular monthly drip. It helps your cash flow. You know what's coming in. So managing people's properties for them, if you do it well, you've got that monthly drip constantly coming in. But you must follow certain laws, such as the tenancy deposit scheme. Have any of you heard of that? Tenancy deposit scheme, there are 3 of them in Wales. We'll look at them in just a short moment. But we need to comply with certain certificates and regulations. But one of the things that you must do is when you rent out a property, there's a whole process of things. And I've got every form, every file, every document you will ever need to set up a business and go tomorrow. And it's available for you, and I've got them all there. In fact, I was with a client on Wednesday last week, and the client of mine handed them the pen drive, business in a box with everything they ever needed. I was grateful today, Femi. I had a phone call of someone saying, I want to set up a letting agency. I'm currently an estate agent, don't do lettings. I'd like to learn how to do it, and I've been recommended. So I'm going to meet them. So it is good, because I'm able to give this advice to other people as well. But the deposits, if you manage a landlord's property for them and somebody moves into a property, on the day when they move in, they'll pay you a month's rent in advance and a bond or deposit. That bond or that deposit you cannot keep. It's illegal. It's not your money. It's a bond or a deposit, and it must be secured in one of 3 tenancy deposit schemes. You can see there, DPS, TDS, and mydeposits.co.uk. 3 different tenancy schemes. But the tenant, when they give you that money, it must be secured with one of those 3 schemes within 30 days. If it's not, the tenant is entitled to 3 times that bond amount back in compensation. So if you do take a tenant's bond, it must be secured. Now, I've just given some of you thought, and your minds are ticking, that you rent properties and you're wondering, is my bond secure? Well, there are ways of finding out. You can go to the TDS, the DPS, or My Deposits and look on the register and see, have the landlord secured that bond with one of those schemes? If not, then they're in breach and you're entitled to 3 times that bond amount back. I'm not suggesting you all go looking now tonight for compensation at 3 times your bond amount, but that's the law. It must be secure. But when a tenant moves in, the reason I'm telling you this information first, these are some of the legal requirements. These are some of the compliance things you need to think about as a let-in agency. In a short while, we're going to look at the practicals of how to set up a letting agency. But the reason I'm telling you this tonight at the start is compliance. Compliance is so important that you need to know how to do things and some of the things that you need to know and what you need to do. But the second most critical area, which trip most people up, is safety certificates. Safety certificates. There are 3 safety certificates by law mandatory that a landlord has to have. One is a gas safety certificate. This is an annual certificate. And again, for some of you renting, how many of you, you don't have to actually raise your hands, but I was going to ask how many of you are renting, but no need to show of hands. But if you are renting, your landlord needs to give you a copy of a gas safety certificate every year. It needs to be done annually to ensure that property is safe for you to live in. If you don't have one and you are renting, make sure you get a copy and make sure the landlord is complying. It's for your safety. And that's the priority, is your safety. But also, if you are a landlord or an agent or thinking of setting up an agency, tenant safety needs to be a priority, because gas kills. What if the gas leaks? Do you want people's blood on your hands? No. Therefore, compliance is important. We have to do things right because we want to make sure that people are safe. Second thing, which is only came in 2 years ago, is EICR, an electrical safety certificate. That was a whole nightmare two years ago, where landlords had to have an electrical safety certificate on their property. Some landlords had to have rewires of all their houses because they were so out of date. But sparks cause fire. Fire kill. Therefore, an electrical safety certificate, again, is mandatory. And it needs to be done every 5 years. Once a certificate is done, valid for 5 years, make sure you, well, we're going to talk in a moment about systems and things to use to keep you alerted so you don't miss it. You know, the number one thing that catches agents out is not being on top of inspections, not being on top of certificates, not being on top of the things that they're paid to be on top of by their clients. So if a client, you're a letting agency and someone's paying you to do a job, do it well. Have the certificates. Be aware of when they're due. And the third thing is an energy performance certificate. Just my opinion, but not worth the paper it's written on. However, if you had an EPC, an energy performance certificate in this place, and changed all the bulbs, it's valid for 10 years, an EPC. But if you change the bulbs in this place, it alters the rating. If you did works in here, it changed the rating. If you put more insulation in and made it more energy efficient, it changed the rating. But valid for years, but actually it's a legal requirement and you've got to have it. So make sure these certificates, if you are managing landlords' properties, you know when they're due so it doesn't trip you up. But the good thing is, which we'll look about money, is these are services you can charge for. If you're a letting agency and you're managing landlords' properties and you're arranging these, you can charge the landlord the privilege of you organising it. We used to get landlord gas safety certificates done for our clients. They don't want to be messing around getting gas certificates every year. We'd organise it for them. But because we're organising it, we charge them the privilege of getting that done. More money for us. More money for you as letting agents. So, as well as gas safety certificates and all of these things, the property must be fit for human habitation. You don't want people living in rough, damp, mouldy, disgusting houses. The property must be free from mould. It's got to be free from hazards. So if the bath's leaking and the floorboards are all rotten, then the house must be fit for human habitation. But also it's got to have proper boilers, and the heating has got to be working. It's not fair for people live in rough accommodation. If some of you are living in property full of damp and full of mould at home right now, this is law. Your landlord has to do it. They have to, because it needs to be fit for human habitation. In the same way as a letting agency, you need to take care of property to make sure that it's up to a standard. When I say you, I don't mean as a letting agency you need to pay for it, but you need to make sure that it's up to the right standard. Required by law under the Fit for Human Habitation Act. That's legislation, that's law. So, the other thing which you have to do, and you might think, Carl, you're telling us these things, they're common sense. But it's amazing the amount of people I've known who've moved into properties and they've never had anything written down. They've given the landlord the first month's rent, landlord's given the keys, and in they've moved. No contract, no certificates, no nothing. But as a letting agency, you need to have these things in place. And you must provide a written contract for the people moving into these properties. Think, Carl, where do I get all this information? Where do I get all this stuff? We give it to you in a package. It's, as I said, like a business in a box. We've got all the templates. There's no need for you to have to go and get them. Why reinvent the wheel? But in Wales, the law changed from tenancy agreement. Any of you aware of the term tenancy agreement? Yes? That changed to an occupational contract 2 years ago. So now you're not a tenant, you're an occupational contract holder. Change of word means the same thing. But actually, an SOC is a standard occupational contract or occupation contract under the Home Wales Act. It's an act that was passed and it's law. So tenancy agreements were done away with, and SOC is the new word for a contract. Same thing, nothing's changed, just a different word. And then the agreement should include the details you see there. It should show clearly how much the rent is, when it's due, and all the information that you need. But when it comes to evictions, if you, as a letting agency, decide you don't want someone in there, or the landlord decides they don't want someone in there, can you just kick them out? No? What's your thoughts? Yes? No? Maybe? No. Why not? If they're not paying the rent, why can't we just kick them out? It's only fair, isn't it? No. Let's see why. So the eviction rules, you cannot remove a tenant without following the legal procedure. Our lawyer just told us. No, listen to them. There are laws around it. I have had landlords who said, actually, I don't want that person in my house anymore, kick them out. They're not in contract anymore because they've been there more than 6 months, kick them out. The law protects the tenant and protects the landlord. A written occupational contract protects you both. That's why you need one. But also, you cannot just kick them out for no fault. If you just don't like them, you can't ask them to leave. But actually, if you want to ask somebody to leave, you need to follow the right process. For non-fault evictions, if you want your property back, for whatever reason, you want it back, you need to give the tenant 6 months' notice now. It used to be 2 months. You'd issue on what was called a Section 21 notice of possession, and you want that property back. 2 months' notice, tenant, you can get possession of the property. If they then choose not to go, you can take them to court, get possession. The Rent Smart Wales and the law under the Housing Act changed this to protect tenants, and it's now 6 months for a tenant of notice. You need to give them 6 months' notice. That's good in one way for a letting agency because you're guaranteed the rent for 6 months more. You still, as a letting agency, the one managing the property, you're still guaranteed income. So look on the bright side of the coin. It's harsh sometimes, but it's good for you as letting agents, as landlords, and those of you who are landlords in the room, you think, not so good for me though. No, I agree. But we're looking at it from a letting agent's perspective this evening. And evictions must follow the Renting Homes Wales Act of 2016 requiring a court order if you want possession. You can't just kick a tenant out and say, I don't want you, off you go. You need to follow the right process and procedure. But with any business, whether it's security like last week, letting agency, recruitment, if you're holding people's data, you must comply with GDPR. I mean, charities and businesses and all things must follow legislation. And data protection, GDPR, is no different. If you're collecting tenant or landlord's data, you must register with the ICO. Think it's £43 a year. I see it is £43 a year to register the ICO. That's, again, a registration with the Information Commissioner's Office. This is just stuff I'm giving you as information so you're aware of what you've got to do if you're thinking of setting up a letting agency. If you keep any personal information, anything about a tenant, all of my client details are secure. They're all on a system, and all my client information is all safe. And we register with the ICO in case there is any breach of that personal data. But you must follow the GDPR rules to avoid any fines. It sounds quite heavy tonight that we're talking information, but the reason I'm giving you such information is so that you're equipped before you actually embark on this journey of, should I set up a letting agency or should I not? But in a moment, we're going to look at the practicals. But I mentioned earlier as well of law and some of the things you've got to do. If you're setting up a letting agency, you also need to comply with the Client Money Protection, CMP. So client money protection, if you handle money such as rent or deposits, you must join a CMP scheme. Client money protection, I'll show you the logo in a moment. You can just register CMP and register and join that scheme. You keep clients' money very separate. So I have a client account. For all my clients who pay me, it goes into a ring-fence client account. It's not my money, client money. Then I transfer it into my account for my own fees. So for example, the letting agency, client account, all money comes in to the client account. Rent, bond, everything, all into the client account. It's protected, it's ring-fenced, and it's governed by CMP. It could be a Lloyds Bank, Barclays Bank, you open the account, but it's a business ring-fence client account. Then, from that client account, my 10% as a managing agent, I used to transfer that into my director's account. That's my money for my services, my 10% of what I was charging the landlord. Then the remaining money, it's not mine. I'm collecting the rent. So out of that, let's say £550, 10%, £55 goes into my client out of my client account to my director's account. You following? That's my money, £55 for every house I'm managing. The remaining balance is not mine. Whose is it? It's the landlord's. It's the client's. It's the landlord's money. Therefore, it's not mine. I need to give it to the client. I need to give it to the landlord. So that remaining balance gets transferred to the landlord so that they can pay their mortgage and whatever other outgoings. It's their money. They do what they want with it. So it's important that you keep your business money separate to your personal money. It's just wisdom in how to manage your affairs. But more than that, if you're not good with personal finance, speak to an accountant. Where is he? Speak to someone who knows best. I'll tell you now, I do what I'm good at. I don't do what I'm not good at. My accounts I outsource because I'm not good at accounts. I don't like numbers. I'm not a fan of numbers. Therefore, my accountant deals with my numbers. What I like doing is this. I love being with people. I love talking to people. I like encouraging people. I like going and traveling and visiting people. That's what I'm good at. That's why I stay in my lane. You stay in your lane. There's no point me trying to be an accountant. I'll mess figures up. Therefore, you do what you're good at. Outsource what you're not good at or what you don't like doing. But also, when you're setting up a letting agency, there are some things you need to look at, such as the law around whether someone can rent. Some of you have been in that position personally. You've been in that, and it's called the right to rent. Are you eligible to rent? So the checks that need to be done include verifying certain documents of the person got. If they want to rent a property for 12 months and they've only got a 6-month visa, then we got a problem to begin with. So you need to check as a landlord or letting agency, have they got a right to rent, or are they only on a short visa? Are they only on a holiday permit? So you need to keep the correct records. And this is very important regarding letting agencies, of keeping the right records and keeping all of the details of those tenants. When I sold Everything Lettings, I handed over all the documents for the last 5 years. It's actually 6 years, but I sold it on year 5. So if I still owned it, the records I would keep for 6 years. Tenancy agreements or rental payments, anything to do with you managing that property must be kept for 6 years. But when it comes to fees and what you can and you can't charge people, most people think an agent can charge whatever they like. That used to be the case. But the law changed. And the law changed to protect tenants from being, I suppose, exploited. Yes, absolutely. To stop landlords taking the mick. And that was the case. Landlords were robbing tenants, really. But you can only now charge tenants a rent, a deposit, and any permitted fees. So permitted fees fall under late payment. If they're not paying their rent, can you charge them a late payment fee? Absolutely. And that's in their agreement. But you can't hide fees. You can't just turn up and say, actually, I'm going to charge you to come and do an inspection. I didn't know about that fee. Well, I want £50. You can't do that because you haven't told them, it's not in the agreement. And the great thing about any agreement between landlord or tenant, everything's detailed. Everything's detailed and everything's clear. So as I said earlier, I'm a firm believer in keeping things simple. If it's detailed and it's written down, you know where you stand. So when it comes on to training, I mentioned Rent Smart Wales. Rent Smart Wales are the governing body that govern landlords and letting agents here in Wales. Doesn't apply if you're a landlord in Bristol or overseas, but you do need training. We run a number of training programs and it covers all things from legal obligations right the way through to tenant rights and responsibilities. This is just an overview of that tonight. We haven't really got time to go into it in detail, although we're going to have a Q&A in a short while. But really, this is a 4 to 6 week training program. All I'm doing tonight is hitting the top line of it to give you knowledge if you're thinking of setting up an estate agency. And we talk about tenant rights and responsibilities. You do have a little test. Anyone like an exam? No, neither do I. But you have got to do one. In fact, a client of mine last week, they did this for the first time. They own an estate agency, have nothing to do with lettings whatsoever. We took them through the training program over the last 4 weeks. They did their exam, passed first time. It's not difficult if you know, but the thing is you don't know what you don't know. True? You don't know what you don't know. But if you know it, it's easy. So, best practices for property management. This is a favourite thing I like to teach people. I love telling and showing you best practices on how to manage landlords' properties for them effectively. So it's so important to have good relationships between landlords and tenants. And good communication often prevents disputes. As long as you've got a good relationship with the tenant, you get on well. People used to say, Carl, why have we never, other agents would say, how come you've never got much in the way of arrears? Why is it you don't have lots of people owing you money? Because I had a good relationship with the tenants. When it came to finding tenants and doing viewings, we'll look at the practical stuff in a moment. We're getting on to that. Bear with me. But when we came to relationships, if I would do a viewing and someone was really awkward or rude, I thought, oh, you have just this, you have this feeling, things ain't going well. Move on. We can call a spade tonight because we know who we follow. You've got the Holy Spirit living in you. Listen to him. Spiritual and business are not separate. We're spiritual beings having an earthly experience. Listen to the Holy Spirit in business. If I was teaching this to a letting agency, secular, then I just say, listen to your gut, because that's the terminology they go on with. But actually, you know who lives in you. Listen to him, because it'll save you heartache and problems further down the road. Even in all areas of business, trust in the Lord with all your heart. We're going to move on or I'm going to start preaching. But actually, be clear. Be clear with your tenants. I had a great relationship with the tenants. I had a good relationship with them. That's why I didn't have much rent arrears. If they ever defaulted or they were late, I'd phone them, because I had a good relationship with them. When I moved them in, and I maintained that friendly, approachable relationship. If they were ever late, there were things I put in place. I never had late payments, because when you move them in, you put them on a standing order, and that standing order, I took that piece of paper to the bank. And these are some of the things I'll teach you in person. But I took that form to the bank myself to ensure that standing order was set up. I knew on the 1st of March, 1st of April, 1st, that money was coming in. Because they filled it in, they signed it, I took it to the bank. Making sure that payment regularly was set up. If it defaulted because genuinely they had no funds in their account or something, I'd phone them, go knock on the door, go and just be friendly. Have good communication, because it prevents disputes. But also be clear with the tenant on their responsibilities and what they have to do. That'll come on to when they move in, what you should give them, which is a welcome guide. But actually, be there for the tenants and help them, because often a tenant just needs you to hold their hand through the process. If when you first, as Femi, I quite encourage you what Femi said earlier, actually some of you have relied on him for a long time, and not necessarily you, but people have relied on the church, help me, and needing their hand held. But actually, some people do need their hand held, and you can help people to move into a new home in a new country sometimes, and they don't know what to do, and you can help them along the way. But one thing once they move in is they will have issues. They will have problems. They will have maintenance issues where their boiler breaks down or stuff happens, because that generally happens when you rent a house. But when it comes to property maintenance, best practice for this is keep logs. Keep logs and do regular property checks to prevent issues. So you see, the important thing about managing a property is the landlord is paying you to look after their property for them. They're paying you a fee. So you need to check the property and make sure that it is how it should be. Have a maintenance schedule. Have a list of if a tenant reports maintenance, what you should do. What you're responsible for, tenant, and what you're responsible for, landlord. But keep a track and keep a log. I'll share that with you in a moment. But some of the things that you need to ensure that if the heating breaks down in the middle of winter, the tenant's not left for days without heating. As a letting agency, treat people how you want to be treated. And that's why I was successful in my agency, is because I treated people how I wanted to be treated. Some landlords, they would say, will you rent this property house out for me? And I wouldn't put a dog in it. In fact, I wouldn't even put a dog in it. It was rough. There was one house up in Tallygarth, up towards Pontypool, to Tallywayne, Pontypool direction. And I went in and looked at this property. It had no doors hanging on there. The internal, no bathroom door. And I said to the landlord, what about this is on the take-on, when I was going and giving him a valuation. And sometimes you'll go and value a property and look at a property and the door be missing, but they're in the middle of maintenance, in the middle of getting it ready to let out. And so what about the door? Oh, I'm not putting a door on there. Bathroom. No door. I said, what about the family? Mum, dad, 2 little girls maybe in the house. Can't have a bathroom with no door. It's fine. No, it's not fine. And there is where the rubber hits the road. Sometimes you'll have to say, thank you very much, but no thank you. Would you be happy living in that property yourself? If you're not happy, don't put someone else in there. Because actually, it's not fair. So be clear with landlords about what should be done and shouldn't be done. Because some landlords will take the mick. They want the money, and they want the money, and they want more money, but they don't want to do none of the work. But actually, you've got to help people. And when it comes then to managing rent, you're there to collect rent. And this is the good part. Because what happens when you collect the rent? You take a percentage. This is the part where it goes in your pocket. And you only get paid when you've got rent coming in. As a letting agency, if you're collecting rent off people, that's when you take your percentage. So, collecting rent and managing arrears. As I said, we didn't have many arrears, and I'll teach you and show you how, because it's not complicated. How do you not have rent arrears? Put them on a standing order, as I've already said. Take that standing order to the bank yourself. If you give the tenant a standing order mandate and say, fill it in and take it to the bank, do you know when that's going to be filled in and done? 2000 and never. Because they're never going to take it to the bank. And you'll be chasing them next month, asking them, where's the rent? And where's the rent? And where's the rent? There are processes and other things such as arrears letters and things we can do. But if you're collecting rent, set them up on a standing order and have a process for late payments. If someone doesn't pay their rent, for whatever reason, they've lost their job, there's a process that we follow. Now this is important for you. It's not written down, but I'll tell you. We used to have 3 letters, and I've got them all in the file. They're all here as templates. 3 letters. The first one we used to issue on day 7. If a tenant was late paying their rent on day 7, they had the first letter, informing them they're 7 days late on paying their rent. When are you going to pay it? Second letter, on day 14, you've received the first letter, informing you you're 7 days in arrears. You're now 14 days in arrears, a little bit firmer, a little bit harsher. When are you going to pay? Third letter, day 30. 30 days, informing them of their legal rights and for them to seek legal advice, because on day 31, straight to the small claims court. And there are ways of dealing with prolific non-payers. You think, oh, that's harsh. They'll only ever do it once. And they won't miss a payment again. Because there are ways of dealing with people legally. Now, as a lawyer, you're probably used to that. And for some of you under the sound of my voice, you think, that's just harsh. That's not kind or not nice. But actually, if you've got that good relationship with someone, and like I spoke earlier about tenant relationships, you'll know if someone is honest and someone has genuinely lost their job and they need help. Well, it might just mean if they've lost their job, do they need help in other ways? We're believers at the end of the day. If they don't have food on the table, can we point them in the right direction of a food bank or Jesus Cares or some other things in the city that are there to help them as a family? So when it comes to tenants moving in and moving out, it's so important that you do things right at the start. Some of the things that you need to do, such as the moving process, is have a detailed inventory. Because when it comes to them moving out, what are you going to compare the checkout with? Checkout matches the inventory? Great. Bearing in mind, when we started, I said you collect the first month's rent and bond. Did I say that? The bond is there for dilapidations and rent arrears. At that point, where a tenant has moved out and they've ruined the property, how are you going to prove that the property was damaged? You need an inventory at the start on them moving in. Again, I've got all the templates there. They're available for you. And explain the tenancy agreement clearly. What I used to do is sit down with the tenant. They'd sign their tenancy agreement, fill in their standing order mandate. We'd go through it and show them, give them all the documents. And then when it comes to exiting and then vacating the property, we do a final property inspection and checkout report. The checkout report and the inventory should marry. If they don't, then you've got dilapidations. You've got problems in the property, then you can make a claim on the bond. Are you still with me? Are you following? We're going to go into a Q&A in just a moment, but one thing I mentioned was it's important to give the tenants a welcome pack. In that welcome pack, it explains everything to do with them living in the house. From the day they move in until the day they move out and everything else in between, including what day the bins go out. Because do you know what? On the first week when they move in their house, guess who they're going to phone? You. When are my bins due out? Phone someone who cares. But actually, how do you know what bin is due out on what day for all the properties across the city? If it's in the welcome pack, you can direct them to the welcome pack, which you give them on moving in. And the welcome pack, their contents have everything in there from moving in to settling in, and you're going to do inspections right the way through to them renewing their tenancy and moving out at the end. But how do you get started as a letting agent? How from this knowledge or overview do you get started going forward? So, as owning Everything Lettings, you have to register with the Property Redress Scheme and CMP, the Client Money Protection. I mentioned that earlier. There are some things legally you will have to have, such as insurance. Last week we spoke about insurance in the security industry. Nothing changes. If you're in business, you need business insurance. Public liability and professional indemnity. Professional indemnity insurance because you're giving advice. If you're giving advice, people can sue you if you give them the wrong advice and they're at a financial loss. Therefore, protect yourself, have insurance. But starting at the top, this is how to get started now. If you're thinking, leaving here tonight and starting, you need to register with Rent Smart Wales. You need to complete the required training for your license and set up your DPS or alternative deposit protection service account. Then you need to ensure that the property that you're going to take on meet the standards and make or have clear tenancy agreements, otherwise known as, what are they called now? Shout it out. Absolutely. I haven't got everyone sleeping on me. Standard Occupational Contracts, SOCs. So, have those SOC records, but then also start advertising the properties and finding tenants. Once you've done those first few or 5 things, you're then able to start advertising landlords' properties. You can advertise them, find tenants and move them in. But before that, Think about it practically from a business perspective. Where are you going to advertise? Rightmove, Zoopla, On the Market, Facebook Marketplace, Gumtree, the newspaper, the Royal Gwent Hospital. There's lots of places. I used to go in the Royal Gwent Hospital before we moved to the Grange, and I used to go there every Tuesday afternoon, walking up and down the corridor, pinning notices on the notice board and run out of there before security caught me. Because doctors are looking for accommodation. They're walking up the corridor and they're, oh, property to let. You're looking for good quality tenants? I was putting them on all the notice boards. If I was ever down around Cardiff, I'd whip into the UHW, pin them on all the notice boards. Save advertising on other spaces. But that there, again, all these slides are going to be available to you. So we run, as I said, this is just an overview tonight because time won't permit for us to talk all night about it. It's a 6-week program. But just to give you an overview there, the startup training program, as you can see behind me, goes in section 1, 2 and 3 on how to start a lettings business, right the way through to different types of tenancies. If you're thinking of setting up an agency and dealing with HMOs, house of multiple occupation, where there's numerous people house sharing, then you need a different type of license. You need different types of things. If you're holiday lets, if you're thinking of going down the Airbnb route, there's all different things to consider. But further than that, business planning. What's the name of your business going to be? Have a look. In fact, we called ourselves Everything Lettings. Did you know there's another Everything Lettings? I didn't, until I had a letter in the post off the solicitor threatening legal action. But I registered the company with Companies House legally. Companies House said, yes, you can use the name. Yes, you're a letting agency. Granted and done. It was a company in Essex called Everything Lettings. They had a website. Ours was everythinglettings.co.uk. Theirs was everything-lettings.co.uk. Very similar. But they were not a letting agency. They were a maintenance company that took care of landlords' maintenance, and their name was Everything Lettings. But it's important to do your due diligence on what your company name is going to be. By this point, we'd registered the company, we'd had all the information about the company, but if I had this knowledge before, would I have called it Everything Lettings? Probably not, because the amount of phone calls I used to get for the company in Essex saying, you owe us money, can we send you the bill? No, you can't, it's not mine, I'll give you the number for the man who owns it. Or an email would pop in with an invoice, wrong company, forward, send it on. Because one thing I was proud of is paying my bills on time. If we had a contractor invoice, we paid it. But it's important to think about processes and procedures in setting up your agency. So as you can see there in section 4, having systems in place and folders on your, I still am paperless. My whole office is right there in front of you. I don't have a filing cabinet. I have hundreds of filing cabinets within there. But it's having processes in place to make your life easy. If you're a paper person, you like filing cabinets, great, run that route. But I'll teach you to make things easy. Then marketing. How are you going? These are just things for you to think about. How are you going to take these properties to market and find new tenants? We'll look at some of those things. There's networking on there. I love networking. I built my business through networking. Getting up early in the morning, going to breakfast meetings. As I mentioned to some of you last week, we're going to start CBN again as a Christian business network for us to get together regularly, maybe for breakfast, meeting with other people. I go to one and there's me as a business consultant, there's an accountant, there's a solicitor, there's lots of different people that meet for breakfast. And sometimes in business it can be lonely. It can be. I'm not going to say you're going to set up your business and it's all going to be great. I'm not painting this wonderful picture. I'm being real tonight. Sometimes it can be lonely. That's why it's important to have good people around you, that when things are tough, you can reach out and support one another. But then when it goes to property appraisal, section 6, what do you need to take with you on that appointment? How are you going to value that property? Very easy if you know how, but if you don't know how, well, you mentioned Zoopla or Rightmove. Rightmove and Zoopla, lots of people use for desktop valuations. You can filter it, put up from here in Mountjoy Street, 3-bedroom houses within 1 mile radius in the last 3 months. And it'll pop up every 3-bedroom house in the last 3 months or last month, however you filter it. Then look at it and filter it on price. Cheapest price to most expensive. So cheapest was 450, most expensive was 600, and the average 550. So you're able to get a ballpark figure of what that property value is worth. That's a desktop valuation, and the more experience you have in lettings, the more you'll be able to walk into a place and eventually know what it's worth. But then you go into having a look at checking tenants in and moving the tenant in there in section 9. What you need to do, we didn't talk about meter readings. Do you need to inform the water company? Do you need to inform the electric company? Do you need to inform the council tax that a tenant has moved in? Well, some of those things, the answer is yes. Some of them is no. Do you need to inform Welsh Water that a tenant has moved in? Yes, because by law you need to inform Welsh Water a tenant's moved in, otherwise the landlord is liable for the water rates. So if the landlord's paying you, it's called the landlord TAP, TAP. You need to inform Welsh Water for your landlord. That's easy. It's just an email. Just send it off to Welsh Water. Same with council tax. I used to email Welsh Water and council tax titled new tenant move in, name, telephone number, contact, copied and paste, a standard line saying these are the details of the new tenant moved in on this date. They're responsible for the utilities going forward. Easy as that. Job done. So making your life easy. So on to managing the tenancy. Let me just check the time for us. Managing the tenancy, I know this has been lots of information. We're going to wrap up shortly and go into a Q&A. But how to manage the tenancy effectively. All of what I told you tonight in these 14 points bring us down into section 14, really, of everything you need is available. You can visit such as adjoining organisations like the National Residential Landlord Association. The National Residential Landlord Association, NALA, has other documents available for you, but more than that, you have a landlord legal helpline. If you're stuck and you don't know what to do, you can phone them for help. So, questions. Let's discuss any questions that you have. And if you do need help with landlord licensing, training, any legal requirements, or anything that we've discussed this evening, reach out. I know some of you this week have reached out following our session last week. I had a Zoom call with someone today, and it was good to talk over Zoom, but get in touch for further support. I want you to be successful. If you want to be a letting agent, I would love nothing more than to see your board all around the city of Newport. You would say, but Carl, Newport's got enough. Yeah, Newport have got enough, but there's also room for you. There's room for you and you. There's room for each and every one of you, because when you go to a hairdresser, on a street full of hairdressers, they're all the hairdressers all together. If you go uptown to Bridge Street, where are all your estate agents? All together. But there's enough room for all of them. But why will people come to you rather than go to you? Because people buy people. And people will come to you because they like you. And people will come to you because they like you. People will come to me because they like me. Some of the clients that I had used me because they just like me. They knew me. Some of you were my clients and you used me because someone else referred you to me. And I was grateful for that. But actually, you use people because you like them. People will use you. So let me encourage you to actually, if you want to do this, go and do it. What's holding you back from setting up your own estate agency, your own letting agency, and being successful? The only one that's holding you back tonight is you. What questions do you have? Let's start with anything. Nothing's off bounds. Let's start with yourself, sir.
Thank you for your presentation. My first question, the registration with ICO, is that for every tenant or just one-off, no matter the amount of tenants you have?
With the ICO?
Yeah.
For the business.
Yeah,
So it's not per individual tenant. The ICO registration covers Ignite Business Consultancy and all of my clients within. So it's not registration for each individual tenant, because you'd have hundreds. By the time you grow your business, you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of clients and people.
Thank you. The next one is, can the rent be increased arbitrarily or without genuine reason? For instance, around June last year, I got a mail from my agent that they're increasing my rent, and the reason they gave was that there is inflation, that the rate keep rising. And I wrote to them that if you are using inflation, then my rate should be coming down, because month on month, inflation rate has been going down. I now went to Bank of England to do a screenshot of the inflation rate, and I sent to them.
Good.
So they wrote back.
What do they say?
So they wrote back. They don't have any reason. So I told them, if you want to increase, but remove that clause.
Yes.
Because if that clause is there,
You counted it by
you can't
evidence.
increase my rent because inflation is going down.
Absolutely. Yes, to answer your question, yes, an agent can increase your rent, and you as an agent can increase the rent. The more you increase the rent, guess what? The more money you're making. So you charge 10%. There's two ways of making money. Increase the landlord's fee or increase the rent. If the rent's 10% and you're increasing it from 500 to 900, you're making more money. Or you do both, increase the landlord fee and increase the rent. But actually, yes, answering your question, the agent can increase your rent, but they can only increase it by a certain amount. They can only increase it by 6% annually. So it can only be increased by a certain percentage. So on 550, at 6% was not a great, I'm going to check that figure now, because in fact, I'll check the figure and come back to you. It was 6%, that was then, it might be 8% now. It's certainly not double the rent. If your rent is £500, they can't up it like that to £1,000. They can't. It might be market value that they charge you 500 and now market value and everything in the area is £900. They still can't increase it dramatically. We had landlords ask that. They realised the rent was £700 and they're only charging £450. Well, we want £700. Can you increase the rent? Absolutely, you can increase the rent, landlord. But you can't do it in one go. What you can do is increase the rent annually until you get to that amount. But by the time you get to that amount, the rent will probably be even more. The other way the landlords could do it, or the agent can do it, is tenant out, new tenant in, higher amount. And we've unfortunately had that, where landlords said, right, the only way is give the tenant notice, they have to leave, and then get a new tenant in at an increased rent. The only downside to that is that the landlord will have setup fees, new fees, all these other increased costs to set up a new tenancy. So answering your question, yes, a tenant can have their rent increased, but only by the correct percentage or the maximum percentage, which I believe is 8% annually. I'll check the figure now before we end. Any other questions? Tell me.
Yes. So, you know, when tenant is looking for apartments,
Yes.
and they fill the forms and send back, and the agent send it to the landlord,
Yes.
or do a review and pick. During that time that the landlord is picking tenants, does the agent get paid?
Does the agent
Get paid.
say it one more time?
During that time that the house is vacant,
Yes, yes.
because the landlord is picking,
Yes.
"Oh, I don't want this, I don't want this, I want this." Do you get paid?
Yes. So, while the landlord's deciding, what the agent can't do is send that landlord all your data. Remember we talked about GDPR?
Yeah.
The agent needs to protect your data. They can't just go sharing your data with the landlord. What the agent can do is say, we've got 3 people. And I can tell you, Mr. Landlord, I've got 3 people, 1, 2, and 3, but I can't send the landlord all your private information because that's your information. So I can say that I've got an accountant earns £25,000 a year, based in Cardiff, able to get good landlord references. I've got someone who's in the care sector, and then I've got someone who's unemployed, not working. Would you like the unemployed one not working on housing benefit? Yes, okay, let's go with that one. Very unlikely. Or, no, I don't want that one, so fine, park that one. Well, we're between 2. So, what I did know of this in the industry, where they would almost put a wall between the 2 people. That one's offered 800, someone else has offered 800. Do you want to increase your rent bid? 850? And it's almost like an auction. That's not fair, is it? It's not fair, and it's a bidding war. If it's advertised at 850, the rent's 850. The landlord's happy with the rent at 850. You don't want to create a bidding war, because you might get someone, he really wants it, but he can't afford 850, 900, and he's get himself into debt for it. So actually, that'd be unfair. But really, as an agent, you want to do the best thing for your client, the landlord, but also the best thing for the tenant. You're going to be managing that property as a letting agent. So the person you're going to pick is the person who you feel is best suited for that property. So if it's a teacher with 3 children, a husband, wife, 3 children, or it's a single male and it's a 3-bedroom house, who is that house best suited to? A man who lives on his own with 3 bedrooms, or a family that need 3 bedrooms? Both of them are similar on salary. Both of them, they're nice, both nice people. But actually, who's the best suited tenant to that property? And that's what will guide you. Make sense?
So between that time when the last tenant moved out,
Yes.
and when the new one comes in,
Yes.
so I'm saying, do you get paid during that time?
Do you get what? Sorry.
The agent.
Paid. Sorry.
You
Do I
get
get paid? My apology. I totally misheard you. Do you get paid? No, you don't. No. You only get paid on when the tenant is in there. So you only ever get paid when you're collecting rent. So for me, it was so important to ensure I had occupied properties. How I did it, and how most agents do it, is when a tenant gives notice they're leaving, start marketing the property. Within your tenancy agreement, occupational contract, it states in there that you're going to market the property within the last 30 days of their tenancy. Within that last 30 days, you market it, you do the viewings, you line up a tenant so that the day the tenant vacates, you do the inspection, the checkout, ready, and line someone up to move in. Then someone moves in, you get paid. So you're getting paid when the property is being managed by you. Otherwise, agents wouldn't care. They'll just, they have 20 properties all empty and vacant and don't care about it. Make sense? Great.
Last question.
Last question, we're coming to you next. Then you and you. And you. Everyone's having a turn tonight. We're in for a long night. He's an accountant, he got questions.
So if a tenant is moving out, is it a must to repaint the walls?
It depends if they've damaged the walls. My house with my children, no. Because if my children drew over the wall, they'd know about it. But actually, if you got a family in there and they're letting their children draw and scribble all over the walls, and I've been into some, and you'll find that particularly in certain ethnic groups where people are slightly more relaxed. Polish people will very strict, very clean, very professional. Never ever miss the rent of a Polish family. They are so, and they are immaculate. That's just my opinion from experience. And different ethnic groups are different. And certain cultures, they all live in one room, downstairs in one room. And then you realise upstairs there's damp starting to appear because they're not heating those rooms. But the whole family live in one room in the lounge with mattresses. Well, they've got a 3-bedroom house and they're all staying in one room. I mean, I'd like to stretch out a little bit, have a bit of peace and quiet. But everyone's different. So, did I answer that question?
Yes, how about
Painting the walls, it's not stains. If you can, put it back to how you found it. So, as a tenant, put the property back to how you found it. But as an agent, can you stipulate people repaint the wall? If it's different on the checkout report to how it is on the inventory, absolutely. Otherwise, you're taking it out of their bond. Definitely. Lady at the back.
Thank you, sir. So I want to ask, you did mention about having children and pets.
Yes.
Then my second question, how will I know if my money was kept in a bond,
Good.
my deposit?
Very good. First one, children and bond. Children and deposit?
Having children and pets.
Children and pets. Very good. Very, very good question. Children. Can a landlord advertise to a family, no children allowed? Do you think they can do that? No? Yes? No? Yes? You want to know? What do you think, sir? Yes? Can the agent say no? Children? Yeah? So we got a mixed census. Can an agent say no children by law? No. The reason, which you'll think is crazy, but it's been, several people have been taken to court over it, which my opinion is just my opinion, and I'm going to keep that to myself. Actually, can an agent say no children to a tenant? No, under the Sex Discrimination Act, the mother who has a child, therefore is then neglected from having that property because she's female. So under the Sex Discrimination Act, Shelter Cymru, the tenancy advocate charity, took a landlord to court and won on the Sex Discrimination Act because the agent discriminated against a female because she was a mother and had children. Therefore, the landlord couldn't say no children. Pets, different ballgame. Pets are part of the family. Can you have pets? Well, I got horses. Can I have a horse in my lounge? No. No one wants a horse in their lounge. I like horses. I don't want a horse in my lounge. It lives in the stable. But actually, if you've got a dog, it's down to the landlord accepting. If you've got a family with a pet and they're going to be there long term, and the pet's been with the family for 15 years, and their landlord reference is good and it's glowing, and they're going to be in your house for a long time. Does it matter really if they have a dog? Now, if they have a zoo, different story. And on the application form, it clearly states pets, children, and all the information on the application form when they view the property. If they put on the application form where it says pets, no, and then on move-in day, you realise they do have pets, you've got grounds for eviction. You can say, well, actually, you stated no, but you do, therefore you lied. It's all about honesty. If we're going to have a tenant-landlord relationship, tenant-agent relationship, it's got to be based on trust. And that's why I got on with my tenants, because I spoke to them like that. We got to work together. I trust you, you got to trust me. I'm going to trust you, you're going to pay the rent. You got to be honest with me. So can a landlord discriminate on pets and children? No to children. Pets is up to them, it's their choice. Question. Sir at the back, you got a mic.
Okay, thank you. Let me start from one of his questions. That if, as an agent, we are presenting tenants to the landlord, would you rather present someone who is willing to pay probably like a 6-month rent upfront? Then secondly, so when you talk about tenants, non-fault eviction.
Yes.
So the landlord will give the tenant a 6 months notice, right?
Yes.
Would the tenant pay the rental payments for the 6 months? Then lastly, you didn't talk about the no deposit option.
Yes.
For the bond. So is there anything like that?
Sure.
That the tenants will insure probably the landlord's property?
Good questions. Thank you so much. Answering your first question about 6 months rent in advance or 12 months rent in advance, those sort of things. What I would say is if it's too good to be true, it probably is. We had a case where a tenant used to pay 6 months rent in advance. So they came into the office, they pay their 6 months rent in advance plus bond, and then we need to do inspections, and we go and do the inspection. Property's marvellous, spotless, clean. Then went back 6 months later, done the inspection, another 6 months rent in advance, and another 6 months rent in advance, always spotless, no problem whatsoever. And the tenant was a lorry driver, so they happened to pay, they'd save their money, they'd have them 6 months to pay initially, paid it, then they saved, had the 6 months again, paid it. They lived in Malpas, always paid 6 months rent in advance, no problem, because that's just how they did it. Once they paid the 6 months, they saved for the next 6 months. That way, they just knew that their rent was always paid. I paid 6 months rent in advance when I moved into my house because I had the money, and it just meant I didn't have to worry monthly about having to pay rent because it was paid. Same as my car insurance, I pay that upfront annually. But there are situations and circumstances where people will say, I'll pay 6 months rent in advance or 12 months rent in advance, and they do it as a decoy so that you don't go and inspect the properties. I would encourage you to inspect the properties always, because there have been situations and circumstances where the tenants are not what they appear to be. And you can do all your due diligence. You must do your due diligence. You can have the tenant's IDs on file, the matching bank statements to prove they are who they say they are. But we had a situation where there was 6 months rent paid in advance. And then we went and inspected the property. It was immaculate, as we expected. Went back and done a property inspection on 12 months. Immaculate. Landlord came with us. They were happy with it. Then the tenant paid 12 months in advance. But then we couldn't go into the property, because if it was too good to be true, it possibly was. We were unable to go into the property, couldn't get hold of them. When we're trying to go in and do inspections, couldn't get hold of them. Something happened, and then that property was raided by the police. and then we realised what actually was going on in the property. So I would encourage you to always do your due diligence. If it's too good to be true, it possibly is. So 6 months in advance is fine. Make sure you're doing your inspections, because you want to make sure that you're managing that property well for the landlord. Second question was? Non-eviction, yes. And then the...
They pay 6 months, the period of eviction. 6 month notice.
6 month notice. So once they paid the 6 months in advance, can you kick them out? Is that what you mean?
When you give them notice.
Bear with me, I'll come back to you right now.
Sorry, on the tenancy non-eviction.
Yes,
So when the landlord gives the tenant 6 months notice.
yes,
So will the tenant be made to pay the rent for
absolutely.
the 6 months?
100%. If they're living in the house, absolutely.
It was a non-fault eviction.
If they don't like it, move out early. You can't live in the rent. This is what most tenants think. Oh, the landlord gave me notice, therefore I don't have to pay my rent. How's that landlord going to pay his mortgage? The landlord still has to pay his mortgage, therefore the tenant still has to pay. Bearing in mind, when do you get paid as an agent? When you collect the rent. So as an agent, are you going to let tenants sit in there for 6 months, not get no wages? No. You're going to collect the rent for that landlord and make sure that the rent is paid on time so you get your fee. Question?
Okay,
Sir? Zero option. So for a tenant not to pay a bond, again, back to if it's too good to be true, it probably is. There are options out there where tenants don't have to pay.
So in my place,
Yes,
so you have the option to choose between 6 weeks rent or 2 weeks rent.
yes,
So the 2 weeks rent is called deposit, is non-refundable.
fee,
Yes.
yes,
So when you're moving out and if there is any damage, you still come and fix it. But if you have a deposit,
Yes.
you can take out of that place. But so in my own apartment, I chose the deposit scheme,
yes,
gave them 2 weeks rent, and
yes. You could do what you want. Yes, there are different schemes out there for tenants, and that's to help tenants. But as an agent, to manage the property effectively, so like our learned friend just said, if he wanted to pay a little fee, a little extra, then when it comes to the end, it's almost like a safety net. You don't have to worry so much about the damage to the property. As an agent, managing landlords' properties, if the tenant pay, because there's some things called zero bond or zero deposit. If the tenant can't afford to pay the deposit and the first month's rent in advance, so £500 rent, £500 deposit, if the tenant can't afford that £1,000, do I really want them? If they can only afford £500 rent, but they want a zero bond scheme that is available, do you really want to take them when you've got someone else over here working full time with the rent and the bond they've saved hard to get? It just shows the character of the person then. Are they better than that one over there? Not saying either one is right or wrong, but actually if someone is willing to pay a rent and bond versus someone who's only going to pay the rent and not the bond, then that's the other one to weigh up. Does that answer your question? The what's that, sir?
Like I said, one I'm aware of is you have to pay fixed £350.
Yes.
Landlord said doesn't want any deposit, pay the money. But if you have any damages, the company will repair, not you.
Yes.
You pay for £350, that's what you pay. Then your monthly rent. Then when you are living, who you pay the money to, they are called, I can't remember their name again.
It's a scheme.
Well, they have the name, you pay to them, they will come to do the repair.
Yes.
If you damage anything, not you.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name.
It's an insurance.
Something like that, but I can't remember the name. But
It's a tenancy insurance policy. So it's a tenancy insurance policy. But we're talking tonight from a letting agency business perspective rather than from the tenant's perspective. From the tenant, that's great. For you, brilliant. You don't have to worry about anything. So not talking about you two, but actually, if I look at it from a tenant, Mr. Tenant over here's perspective, great for him, he's going to trash a house. He's not worried because he's paid his excess on his insurance. So he don't care what the house is going to be like. But for me as the business, as a letting agency, I want to ensure that my client, the landlord's house, is taken care of well. Therefore, the tenant is responsible for all damages and repairs, and they need to treat it well. You question for yourself, then yourself, Shola. And you, sir. You ready when you are?
Okay, my first question goes with being a landlord, and you are the one having the letting agency. So when there is no tenant in your apartment, do you still get to pay fees? Like if there is nobody in the apartment, you turn off the light, no water supply, nothing. Is there, and you are still waiting for a tenant to come in?
Yes.
Are there fees, statutory fees that you still have to keep funding?
Yes. As
That's
the
first
agent
question.
or the landlord?
I don't think it's for the agent, like as a landlord, and you're still running,
Yes.
you are the one running the agency,
Absolutely.
but you own the house.
If you own the house.
You own the house. So is it like you just have to put somebody there, or you could just lock it up and say, I don't want stress for a month?
Yep.
And stuff like that. The second question I have was on the licensing. You talked
Let's answer
about,
that first one and come back to the licensing.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll forget the question. So answering your question, if you own a property as a landlord and you lock the door and leave it empty for 6 months, is there anything to pay? Is that what you mean? Do you have any costs? You can get an exemption off the local authority on council tax up to 6 months if the property is unfurnished. Local council will give you a 6 months exemption on council tax as a landlord. But if you're the agent, for me, I was managing landlords' properties for them, not managing my own properties. But even if you own the property and it's under your company and you're the agent as well, then you've still got mortgage to pay. You've still got council tax to pay, even if it's empty. You might get an exemption on the council tax, but everything else you've got to pay. So the importance is getting a tenant into that rental property as quick as possible so that you're getting a contribution into the pot to cover the cost of running the house. Next question.
Okay, I wanted to ask something extensively, like how you cut taxes on that, but I think it's quite extensive because that's not where we are right now. So the second...
Speak to our friend, he's the accountant.
Okay, so the second question I have was on licensing. You talked about some license. You didn't go deep into it because you said you have a 4 weeks class, but I wanted to know if there are criteria to getting off those. What are they in getting, aside which is probably DBS or something like that? Aside that, are there any other criteria?
Absolutely. The website to visit is Rent Smart Wales in Cardiff. If you've got any queries, it's rentsmartwales@cardiff.gov.uk. Email them. rentsmartwales@cardiff.gov.uk. Cardiff Council manage the database for Rent Smart Wales. So any requirements will all be on there. Training is one of them, and your policies such as CMP, insurance, like your public liability and professional indemnity, and being a member of a property redress scheme like the PRS, property redress scheme. They're the requirements.
Okay, thank you. The third question I have is on, he talked about defacing of a wall or something. But my own question is where the walls are not defaced, but probably, let me give you an instance of an apartment where you came in and the rocks were green, but based on something happened, you know you can't leave that apartment that way. You have to take off the rocks, change them, same quality but a different color.
Yes.
If I was the letting agent, would I still charge for that? Or based on, I know the inventory I had,
Yes.
the colors and everything, and it's changed,
Sure.
do I need to charge for that?
So regarding as an agent versus the check out report versus the inventory on moving it in, if they're different, then you have grounds to charge. You have grounds to go to the DPS and make a claim on that bond. And on a practical level, what I used to do with the tenant is on checkout, go around. So on you're checking out today. Today I'm going to meet you at the property, collect the keys back, and we're going to do your checkout report. We'll go around. There's the form. Any dilapidations, right? The roof there. There's a watermark on there. So right there on the form, watermark on the ceiling of the roof. Having a look around, the carpet's fine. Everything there's a bit of something going on up here. So maybe there's been a leak. Just write it on the form. We're both together. We've just inspected your property. There's an iron mark right here on the carpet. There's not, because no one's been ironing in here. But iron mark, someone's dropped the iron. You can see that, so can I. Write it on the form. That's the checkout document. That is different to the inventory. That wasn't on there when you moved in. That's been on there for years. But actually, something's happened here. Maybe there's a leak. Maybe so, but that is definitely tenant negligence. That's different to when you moved in. Therefore, when you check out, you collect the keys, and we're agreeing that there's an iron mark on the carpet. You're agreeing because you can see it. We're not arguing about it, we're just agreeing actually. Did you see that with your own eyes? Yep, it's on the form, I've just written it down. Therefore, we're agreeing. So when it comes to dispute, you're agreeing that there's an iron mark. Well, it's not on the inventory, so you must have done it. I'm not blaming you, I'm not saying naughty person, you ironed my carpet, but there's an iron mark on there. Therefore, someone got to pay for it, and it's not going to be the landlord, because as the agent, you're working for the landlord, so the tenant has to pay. Either she can get the carpet replaced and pay for it, or it comes out the bond. And the way to claim on that is through the DPS, the Deposit Protection Service, and that comes, the carpet's marked, so it comes out of the bond. Make sense? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Shola. Oh, sir. One second.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is, if the tenant is leaving the property and the damage done, the amount to fix it is higher than the bond, what happens?
That's a good, very, very good question. If the amount is higher than the bond, the landlord can go down the route of making a claim in the small claims court. They can then claim for the difference through a solicitor and take them to the small claims court for damages. But actually, the bond, the reason we take a month's rent is a month's rent usually, not always, covers the amount of damage. If it needs a carpet replaced in here, £900 bond will probably cover a carpet and painting and a touch up of a few things in here. More than likely, I've yet to know a bond that doesn't cover all of it, but if they smash the property to bits, you're just grateful to have them out of there. So the likelihood is they haven't been paying your rent anyway, so you're glad to have them gone. But you're right, answering the question, you can go through the small claims court and get the money back.
Yeah, concerning the training, what's the form of the training? Is it that's individual or is it a group? We can organize it in a group. And how much does it cost? That's number one. Then the second one, looking at all those licenses, is it during the training that you can estimate the cost of the licenses so that one can budget for them?
For the license,
for the licenses, to get all the licenses required.
yes.
Yeah. Can you get estimates of the cost?
Absolutely,
of the
yes.
so that you can budget for
absolutely. Rentsmartwales.gov.uk. Go onto the Rent Smart Wales website for licenses, and it'll tell you how much you need to pay. £148 for a landlord registration license, and for an agent license, it depends on how many properties you're managing. 0 to 20 is a certain band. 20 to 100 is another band. When it goes over 100 properties being managed to 500, it jumps dramatically in excess between £4,000 and £5,000. When it's just 0 properties, it's minimal amount. I think it was £87. So it's not a lot of money, but the more you manage, and the license is 5 years. So in 5 years' time, when it comes to renewing your license, if you've got 150 properties, you don't mind spending £4,000 on renewing your license because you're making the money. So you can budget. In regards to the training, I'll send you further information later. Just reach out and let us know, and I'll send you the breakdown of everything you need to know. But it can be in person, it can be in groups. Most of our training we do on a one-to-one to personally set you up as a business. So our training is dedicated to you and creating your business and setting you up as an estate agent, one-to-one training, because we give you all the documents you need in order to get you started. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. You talked about annual gas check.
Yes.
Annual gas check in the house. Are you allowed to have a gas cylinder in a house? And if you do you also check it annually?
Gas cylinder as in a gas bottle, propane bottle, like barbecue bottle?
The cylinder, that's the 12 kg? Or
Yeah, like a 12 kg gas bottle for like the barbecue, or no, they're portable. So I've got them. I've got the red propane bottles at home. You know, you got 6 kg, 12 kg, and then the big 47 kgs, the big propane bottles. The gas certificate will not check those sort of things. They're just portable. They're just for your barbecue out leave them in a shed. It's nothing to do with the property. The only thing the gas certificate checks is a landlord gas certificate, making sure that the property and the boiler is safe as a landlord for the tenant.
what about the cylinder? How are you sure the cylinder is safe?
The gas, like a propane bottle?
Yes.
Cylinder.
Yes, the cylinder, the big one.
What would you use it for?
No, I'm just asking because some people
Keep
it
'em.
in the house
Yes.
for maybe external use. Not
Yes. You can't tell if they're safe. I keep one for the barbecue. I've got 2 or 3 of them because I like camping and different things. So I keep different size bottles. But in the summer they're outside my back door because I have barbecues with them. But they're not. If the sun gets on them or and they explode, well, they're dangerous. But that's down to the tenant. It's the tenant living in there that's keeping them. It's nothing to do with the landlord and the gas safety certificate. So the cylinder inside the house, some people use them for Calagas fires. They'll have a fire, like a portable fire that people run on gas. Lots of old people. They'd only ever heat one room. In the lounge, they'll have the fire going, and they run them on portable gas canisters or cylinders. But actually, they're portable. They're the same. They're just like having this tripod sat here. This belongs to the tenant, same as the gas fire. It's a portable item that the tenant's brought in, so it's nothing to do with the landlord. So the gas certificate wouldn't cover those things because they're portable appliances. Okay? Yes.
I'm just wanting to continue where he stopped. You didn't talk about your training fee.
Sure.
Yes.
So I have got here. It's not on the slides because I wasn't. But all of these these sections here, this is the reason I didn't sort of talk about it, is not a sales pitch for me. It's to equip you tonight. I'm not here to sell my services, but the fact you asked, I'm happy to be open and transparent, but this is not a sales pitch for me to sell my services. I'm grateful that you asked, and I'd love to engage you as clients, all of you, but I've not come here tonight to win business. I've come here to educate you and tell you, but we charge £300 for each section that we go through. So, but we do the entire course at £1,500. So that's just so you know the sort of ballpark figure. If people do individual sections, like section 2, we charge £300 for that section and go through that. But if they want to do a whole lot, we normally do £1,500 for the entire course. And then you get the section, the most important part, section 14, which is all the templates and letters. But the reason I avoided the answer is I don't want to sound like I'm selling or pitching to you to win business. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to help and encourage you to go and do it. All of you can be successful in business. Go and do it. You don't need my help. I'll help you. I'm more than happy to take your money because that's my business. But I'm not here to sell my service. Carry on.
Okay, so I'm just asking, I'm just
Sure.
a curious person.
No, absolutely, no problem.
Okay, so I think he asked the question. Let me start with this. With how elaborate you have explained to us, you have educated everyone. Do we still need the training? That's the first one. Or we could just start from where we are and where we get, wherever we get, then we email you and say, what can we do from here? That's the first
No!
Okay, that's the first question. Then the second question is, this 4 weeks, is it like every day 4 weeks, or there is a particular, maybe weekends or something?
Thank you so much. 4 weeks, and we spend 1 day together. Tomorrow I'm going up to Aberdare to meet that new person, and it's going to be 4 weeks, and we'll spend the morning together for 4 weeks. It's probably 3 hours. Honestly, you've sat for a long time tonight. You know, most of the time in church, if I'm preaching, 40 minutes, because your mind can only take what your bum can handle. If you're sitting around, you start twitching and falling asleep. Actually, you sat for a long time tonight. So when I'm with someone, normally 3 hours, 4 hours is enough, and then their brain is fried. They're like, too much information. So as long or as little as you need, but normally over 4 weeks, you've covered everything. We can do it in 1 week. Meet every day for 1 week. If you want, we'll work with you as little or as much as you want. So I appreciate you asking, but answering the question, do you need training? No. You've been given and equipped everything you need. Would I like to train you more? Yes, absolutely. I'd like to work with you one-to-one, but the most important is the section 14, the letters, the templates, the contacts, the templates. Every document you'll ever need, we give you. So you have it to go and do, to set up. It's a business in a box, but I don't give that out for free.
Follow up, the training, is there virtual opportunity for the training? Maybe Teams, Google Meet?
Absolutely, yes. The lady I met earlier today had a call with someone in London this morning for an hour, and 40 minutes because Zoom kicked us off then. But yeah, that was virtual, and we'll meet 4 times over 4 weeks and do it over Teams. But we're local, we'll do it in person.
Okay, thank you so much.
You.
I'm even first. This is my first time of knowing that he does training. Okay, I'm hearing for the first time. But if that section 13 is there, or section 14, or whatever letters, I think if you want to do business, instead of you making a mistake, get a ready-made template. If you really want to do business, it doesn't worth it for you to go through all the troubles and challenges. 1,500 looks a very high amount of money, but it's worthwhile on the long run. one contract can give you the 1,500 you need it within a year. So I would suggest that you look into that as part of the training. And I'm sure you probably can talk to him. If you are 2 or 3, there might be a discount and it can go down and down instead of it being 1,500. So if you're really serious about that, I would suggest that you can do all the readings on your own and see if you can run without template. But I tell you, connection matters a lot. And whosoever bridge you up or probably mentor you will not only just do the paperwork, will also connect you. And so he's no longer running Everything Latin. I'm sure you know. He has sold Everything Latin to Paul Foch 2 years ago. But he still have all the templates to teach, so he will still have the connection. So please, I would advise, if you have some money, don't just do the listening and reading on your own. Try to see if you can also get the connection.
The years of knowledge, prior to setting up Everything Lettings, that was 2 years ago since I left. I did it for 5 years, but I've been in the industry for 18 years previously with Peter Allen Darlows and some of the other agents. So yeah, it's more than just knowledge, it's lived experience, and I want you to all be successful. So if you've got any questions, ask. And as I say, we can always, if 2 or 3 you want to do it, we'll do it together, and look at that together. Reach out. My details are on screen. You've got them. If you've got any questions, just there, send me an email, and we'll gladly help you. Time is half hour over. However, if you do have any questions, any queries, anything more you want to know, please reach out and ask. Send us an email. But as we close, would you allow me this evening just to pray for you? Let's pray, because he's at the center of everything we do. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, thank you for tonight. Father, I thank you for your church, your body, which is your bride. Father, I pray for your saints, these people. I pray in Jesus' name that you bless them and keep them. Amen. Lord, you make your face to shine upon them and be gracious to them. And Lord, that you keep them in Jesus' name. Father, as we go from this place, I pray for creativity. I pray for creative ideas amongst each person. I pray for those who have got ideas that you, tonight as they sleep, they dream. And Lord, they go into areas that only they can impact. Father, I pray for your blessing on every person here tonight, and those who can't be here, that people will be prosperous in all they do because they keep their eyes fixed on you. Jesus, I pray you keep everyone's eyes fixed on you, the author and finisher of our faith. In Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much for tonight.